So when we're writing formulas, you really kind of have a lot of options as far as how you write the formula. We've already demonstrated that you can write a formula just by starting with an equal sign and then writing a whole bunch of numbers over and have it add them or subtract them or divide them. Right? But when we do that, we just saw, yep, that's a flat, call it static equation. It will always be 245 plus 374. That will never change. But the other thing we could do is instead of just putting a flat number, we could actually use the cell references of the cells on the spreadsheet as a way to kind of work our formula. So don't just add together 245 plus 374. Why don't you go ahead and add together the value, whatever value it is, that's found in cell F9, plus the value that's found in A2. So don't give me just a straight number. Tell me go to the cell and grab the value from there and add it and then put it as part of the equation. I'll demonstrate this for you in a moment. We have a lot of flexibility. You can do a mixture of both values and cell references in an equation. We can do things like this, take two cells and add them together. Take two cells and do a larger, more complicated formula. We can do them where we have maybe take the value in a cell and multiply by a number. We can do that, or any sort of a combination here. So we don't just have to put numbers. We can put numbers and cell references, or just cell references. But cell references is going to be a good thing. All right. So let's take a look and see what that will do in our formula in our spreadsheet. All right. So when I come back in here, let's rewrite this formula that we wrote before, where I want to add together all of the hamburger sales for the week. But instead of doing them with the numbers, why don't we write this formula with the cell references? Okay. Remember, we got to start with an equal sign. Now, you have two ways to be able to actually put the cell references into the formula. You can decide to just type the reference as you need it. Okay. Also remember that when you're doing cell references, it's always the combination of the column and the row that the cell is in. So this cell happens to be cell C2. This cell over here is cell E5. All right. And it always has to come column and then row when you do that. So the Monday hamburger total is in cell C2 plus E2 plus E2 plus F2 plus G2. Okay, so we see that. So instead of typing these numbers, why don't you use the cell reference? The thing I like about this is that it actually will color code the cell and the cell reference in the formula to match, so you can have a visual sense of where your data is coming from on the spreadsheet. I kind of like that. When I hit enter, you get the same answer. Right? The other way that we could write that formula, if you maybe don't want to do all that typing, is that while you are writing the formula, you can actually, again, start with an equal sign. Now that you're starting to write a formula, if you click on a cell, so I want to grab C2, when you click on the cell, notice it dropped in for you the cell reference right there, which is kind of neat. Plus D2 plus E2. So maybe you want to click your way through. That's an option also. So there are two ways to enter the cell reference. Just type it, or after you've hit enter on the formula to start it, start clicking on cells. And every time you click, it's going to change the formula or the cell reference to whatever you just clicked on. Okay, so we get our answer. Okay, so here we have two examples of that you can write a formula using just numbers and your operators, or you can use cell references in the operators. All right, so P, why are you making such a big deal of this? Why does this matter? Here's why it matters. Let's go back to our problem with the hamburgers. All right. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that the number isn't really 315, it's really 339. Okay. Watch the green box as we go forward here. If I now change the Thursday sales total notice that the formula in the green box changed itself. It updated to now reflect the new number sitting here in cell F2. Because again, in this formula that we wrote here, we hard wrote in there the 315 number for Thursday. We wrote it in there, and the only thing it's ever going to do is add 315. It doesn't matter what's in the cell. Here, we don't care about the number, we care about the position on the spreadsheet. So take whatever number is in C2 and make it part of the formula. So that's why when you change the number, if I even just change this to 340, there's a new number, let me update the math. And it can be any number. I can put 1,000,000 in there and it will still do the math, or 100,000. It'll still do the math and will update based on the new values. Okay. So my recommendation for you is going forward. Are there going to be times where we just want to do the straight math? Sure. My personal recommendation is that any time you have a value that's already on your spreadsheet, and if you want to make it part of an equation, don't use the number, use the cell reference. Refer to the value that's already on the spreadsheet. We want to do stuff like this. Okay. So going forward, unless I tell you otherwise, it's always a good idea to use the cell reference in your formula. Okay. We're going to see some things later on where cell references are going to be required. You can't get around it. So if you need to play Battleship this weekend, please go do that. But get used to working with the cell references because it's going to be a really critical thing as we go forward.